Senior Energy Analyst with MST Financial. Saul, always good to get your feedback. Can I just start with you on the government's new emissions reductions target? Is this realistic, and does it hurt or does it aid the Australian economy as the government was trying to portray today?
Well, the target range that's been put out there puts us on the same trajectory as the 43% emission reduction target by 2030. So the problem with it is we're not on track for the 43% target by 2030, which is going to make the 2035 target hard to reach too. If you look at the sectors where the government's expecting to actually make most of the headway to actually reach the 2035 target, it's almost all contained in the electricity sector, resources sector, and the carbon offset sector. Now, if you just want to break those down, in the electricity sector, that is facing significantly slower rollout of renewables than the government has hoped for. The renewable target by 2030 is impossible to meet. So that's already a challenging one. And it's not about the money. It's about the logistics, the approvals, the social license, which is becoming increasingly difficult. And then the second one, the carbon offset space. Remember, the government's actually paused the key method for nature-based offsets over the last year. And so that's going to actually slow down the ability to generate more carbon credits. So the government's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting on fixing our approvals landscape and restoring in a practical way the full ACCU methodology under the safeguard scheme in order to have a chance of meeting the low end of those targets. And track record over the last 3 years suggests they may not get there.
Okay, so I just want to go to one thing. Let's go to the Prime Minister here talking about this and just his view on the sense for industry in doing this.
We know that getting emissions down in the resources sector and heavy industry is the next major area and will help heavy industry to do the heavy lifting. Today we're announcing a new net zero $5 billion fund in the National Reconstruction Fund to help large industry decarbonise and scale up more renewables and low emissions manufacturing.
So here's the reality of that. There's another $5 billion borrowed to try and give more incentive to industry to try and either create some sort of green energy or to try and somehow make itself viable in the face of what is otherwise going to be energy shortages that you're portraying.
Look, the $5 billion, and there's another $2 billion allotment as well on top of that. Truth is, it's quite a small number. Most of the heavy lifting here is going to be done under the safeguard mechanism, which effectively imposes a penalty if heavy industry does not decarbonise at a defined rate. So, look, it's a carbon price, carbon tax, if you want to call it that, although it's a market-based, technology-agnostic mechanism. That's what's used here. I think it's a bit disingenuous for the government to suggest that this is going to be a growth agenda for the economy. It's not. You make a policy decision to decarbonise. That comes with a trade-off and a cost. We need to be upfront that this is going to be a cost to the economy involved. And this idea that we're going to have future green industries and green premiums has been promised many times before and never eventuated.
Yes.
So I think there should just be some transparency. And the reality is, when you don't tell the truth to the Aussie public and you aren't straight with them, then they tend to not be brought along for the journey, and it causes a political problem later. I think the government would have been just better off being frank with the Australian people, saying we've made a policy choice, there's going to be a cost trade-off, but they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, just like they promised us. You can have cheaper, greener, more reliable electricity, and and that hasn't played out, and people now see their bills rising. It's the same story here, where they promise you can have you can have decarbonisation while also growing the economy and no economic impact. I'm afraid that's just not the case.
Okay, just quickly, give me your two bobs worth on the Santos. Was it inevitable that the Abu Dhabi oil company would eventually have to walk away?
I think it was not in the national interest, and so ultimately it was likely to not be given approval. The surprise here is that the ADNOC have walked away so early in the piece, and it's clear that the relationship and the trust between the bidder, ADNOC, and Santos has broken down. And this is now the second time in as many years that a bidder has walked away well into a due diligence process of looking at Santos. Woodside did the same last year. When you have these due diligence processes going through and a breakdown of trust, the common denominator appears to be Santos. And I think you're going to see investors starting to put some pressure on Santos here, asking why they've allowed two bidders to slip through their fingers amidst an otherwise lagging share price for 5 years, and if there needs to be some accountability for all of this at a governance, board level and leadership level.
Indeed. I'll tell you what, Saul Kavonic, always good to get you on the program and your insights. Many thanks for your time today.
Thank you.